Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Cioffi here. It's a Saturday night. Figured I'd get this done before the Yankee game gets underway. We've got, of course, the pattern change that we've been talking about for the last several days, and that appears to be underway. And actually, it's going to be moved along by Typhoon Lan, which is going to be moving over Tokyo, Japan, possibly as a strong Category 2, borderline Category 3 hurricane on Sunday. Right now, it's a Cat 5 with top winds of 135 knots, and it's moving toward the north. So we're going to take a look at that. And one of the things one of the takeaways I got today from the model runs and from last night's model runs is that it looks like this is not going to be a one-and-done type change. It looks like the change is going to last for a little while at least. I would think a couple of weeks, or maybe a little longer than that. I don't know. But certainly does look impressive enough. The whole scheme across North America will be completely different from what it was. And it is going to take a colder turn. It should bring temperatures down back to where they should be for this time of year in the eastern part of the United States. And in fact, for a large area of the east eventually, not right away, will be below normal. I think areas in the southeast and Florida might see the largest anomalies out of all of this. These troughs are fairly deep. The jet streams are extending pretty far to the south into northern Florida. So that will probably bring a push of cooler, drier air pretty far to the south. Also, the European model is hinting at the potential for something developing in the Northwest Caribbean where pressures are going to continue to remain low. I think the risk has been there all along and will remain there for something possibly to develop toward the latter part of the forecast period. So we're talking next weekend and beyond. But all of this is sort of intertwined in the long-term speculation that we're going to be doing here. And in fact, why don't we do that? And then I will come back and we'll talk about it some more. So just stand by. The seeds of pattern change can come from all sorts of places. And in this particular instance, with what we're going to be seeing across North America in the next week or two, is actually going to be aided and pushed along by this Typhoon Lan, which is a Category 5 hurricane that is going to be passing over the island of Japan during Sunday and Sunday night. Top winds right now are 135 knots, or about 160, 165 miles an hour, and it's moving northward. Just to give you a better geographic perspective here, thanks to tropicaltidbits.com, by the way, for these wonderful maps. These islands, Oshima, Amani, and Kadena, passing east of those islands and expected to make a landfall really right near Tokyo. And then going northeast from there, the storm is actually forecast to pass very close to or right over Tokyo on Sunday at 18Z, which is 2 p.m. Eastern time for us, and then going out northeastward from there. But it's this typhoon that really gets things going in the upper atmosphere. Now, here's the forecast track of Lan as it moves northeastward, very close to Korea and just offshore, and then turns eastward from there toward the Bering Straits and toward the Aleutians. Now, when we're going to switch over to our upper air pattern, and you can see what's happening at the moment, where we have a deep upper low sitting in the Bering Sea, deep trough off the west coast. Actually, you still have this fire hose jet, as we've often described it, coming into the Pacific with a trough that's now moving into the plain states, and of course the corresponding ridge that's in the east that has kept things so dry and so beautiful over a large area. And then we have an Atlantic low that's sitting out there that is anchoring the ridge is anchored in between the two troughs. Now, here's what's going to happen going forward. and we are looking at the latest GFS model run, that trough that's coming into the plains starts to deepen as it moves into the Ohio Valley, and it actually extends pretty far south. This cool shot that's going to come down with this is going to wind up going more to the south than to the east, bringing below normal temperatures down into Florida. That trough swings around. Now, I want you to notice what's going on at the same time as we move toward the end of the week, and this is now to Friday of this coming week. You have a upper high out just south of Greenland. You have an upper high off the west coast, and they're sort of locked in there. So this is going to create a situation where, as each trough lifts out, another piece of energy is going to dive southward to replace it, and that is indeed the case. So whatever happens in the east Tuesday into Wednesday is then replaced by another deep trough that drops down into the Great Lakes. That lifts up and around the end of the month, the 30th, and for the 31st Halloween. And you notice as that lifts up with that Atlantic upper high still up here and kind of holding, and also the ridge off the west coast kind of holding, you have another trough that drops down. So it looks like this pattern change is not going to be a one and done situation. It's going to last for a while. All the models seem to be indicating this, and I'm just taking it out on the new GFS out to day 16, where the trough is lifting out a bit, and then the westerlies kind of flatten out. The flow flattens out a bit over the United States, but you still basically have a flow coming out of Canada. So it certainly seems to me, with the ridge off the west coast, an upper low cut off south of the Aleutians extending down to Hawaii, that this at least says that we are going to get frequent, or certainly more frequent, events as far as precipitation is concerned. And as each weather system goes by, it'll probably turn progressively colder. We'll switch over to the GFS now and take a look at a bit more in terms of specifics, starting with the current situation. Of course, that we do have a lot of action tonight going on in the Pacific Northwest, with some heavy rains moving again into western Washington, with snows in the mountains. You can see showers with the next front on Monday moving into the Ohio Valley. But this time around, because there's energy in that trough coming down, and when you look at the surface map, you can see the reflection of that. There's a surface low in eastern Tennessee, and then there's another system that's dropping down over into the western lakes. So all of that is going to at least mean that we will definitely get some rain here. And you can see on Tuesday that rain gets in here. There's a shot of colder air behind it. The west calms down just a little bit. And here we have the next weather system coming out into the plains and moving toward the east and picking up some Gulf moisture. And this is for next weekend with the next cold front. And behind it, the air is fairly chilly. There's a big high that's coming down into Montana. You got cold air that's going to be coming down behind the system for next weekend. So as we said, it gets progressively colder with each one. And meanwhile, in the west, weather conditions calm down and dry out. And as we go deeper into the period, a Great Lakes system along about day 11 and 12 that moves into the eastern part of the United States, and then another cold front after that. So you get the idea here, folks. This is not going to be like we have the pattern that we've been sitting in, where we're just dealing with this big upper high in the east and not much else. I want to take a look at some of the rainfall amounts that we're seeing at the moment with these weather systems, and you'll notice through Monday evening, there are 2 to 4 inch or more amounts in western Washington and northwestern Oregon, and some higher amounts, and some of this is going to be snow in parts of Idaho and in eastern Washington and eastern Oregon. In the east, we've got some general 2 to 3 inch rainfalls in the Tennessee Valley down into Alabama and northern Georgia, with 1 inch amounts extending up to the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley. And as we push it toward the east coast, we finally get into some decent rain. Looks like the model wants to make a wave Tuesday night into Wednesday that's going to have more impact for coastal areas in coastal New England, with some 2 to 4 inch rainfall amounts. If this is right, if that front slows down and stalls for a little bit, it might prolong the rain along coastal areas. And with respect to snow, when we look at the total snowfall, well, this is at least through Thursday of next week, but most of this is going to fall here in Washington and Oregon. This all falls tonight and tomorrow, and there are some isolated 1 foot plus amounts being indicated in parts of Idaho, northeastern Washington, and over into western Montana. And if we take it out to the 10-day period, this is what the GFS at least is indicating through day 10, which is some significant snow starting to fall across northeastern Minnesota, the upper peninsula of Michigan, northwestern Wisconsin, and even into parts of the lower peninsula of Michigan. And also maybe it looks like the first signs of some lake effect going into Halloween, if the model is correct with this idea of the succession of troughs, and each one bringing down progressively colder air. So it's a process, folks. It's a stair-step process. One of the things I also want to point out, by the way, is when we look at the European model today, the European is pointing to the idea, and I'm going to go to the North Atlantic view, and we'll put up the sea level pressure here. The European is trying, toward the end of the period, pressures are still going to be on the low side in the Northwest Caribbean, so it does attempt to form some kind of, I think it would be a tropical system, certainly should be, in the Northwest Caribbean in here, right at the end of its forecast period. We'll have to wait and see whether that is going to be the case. At this point, one of the things that's happening in the upper atmosphere is you have the approaching deep trough moving through the Ohio and Tennessee Valley, and that extends down into the Gulf of Mexico. So it would seem to me that that would probably get picked up and it would move toward the northeast, assuming that that's correct. But if we wind up with, if reality points out to maybe that there's some sort of deeper trough further to the west, but this is, of course, all long-term speculation on my part, just kind of doing it off the top of my head. So a lot of things to look at going forward over the next few days. So let's stop it right here, and we will take a look at the Typhoon Lan as it continues to move. All right, so I'm back. Okay, folks, it's October 20th. I have no idea when the first snows are going to be falling in the New York, New Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut, Hudson Valley, and eastern Pennsylvania area. So let's put that on the table right now. I also, I will say this again, because I know everybody doesn't watch the live streams every day, so you're not going to always catch it. So I know for some of you it'll be repetitive, but for many of you it might not be. I'm not doing a wintertime forecast. To me, it's an exercise in futility. The long range is too complex for me to really get my head around. There's a lot of people out there that do great jobs with the long range, but even they struggle with it. So I'm not gonna do it. What's the point? You saw what the Weather Service did with their forecasting. Their forecast basically calling for, above normal temperatures for a good chunk of the United States. Who knows? Really, certainly that would be basically persistence. The trend is your friend. We've had mostly above normal temperature months for most of the eastern part of the United States during the last 2 years. So the trend, the trend is your friend is something that I always kind of stick with a lot. So until we see some signs of that breaking down, until we can put together a couple of below normal months in a row, you have to lean to the idea that temperatures on average are going to be above normal. However, the snow question is different, because as we saw last year in a lot of areas in the Northeast, when it did get cold, it snowed, and a lot of areas finished with much above average snowfall, especially north of 40 degrees north latitude. South of there, not so much, but north of 40 degrees north latitude, it did throughout in the Northeast. So every winter is going to leave. We're going to see a signature pattern develop during November, December, and that's usually holds for a good chunk of the winter season. And That's what we're going to have to wait to see what happens. We're seeing the seeds of a pattern change here being planted. Everything looks like it's getting underway. So we'll watch it evolve, and there will be, I'm sure, a number of twists and turns. If you're looking for instantaneous cold, that's not going to happen. It's going to be a stair-step decline with each passing trough as it moves on through. Anthony Orr, there's no such thing as a bad question, but this is be like the potent cold blast that occurred in November of 2014, and I'm sure you're referring to Typhoon Lan. Some typhoons that recurve east of Japan and wind up eventually finding their way in one form or another up into the Gulf of Alaska as they maybe merge with whatever extratropical low is already out there. Oftentimes energizes the pattern and causes troughs to develop in the eastern part of the United States. The long range today and yesterday certainly. How's that? Did my audio come back? It should be back. I'm sorry. I must have accidentally clicked something. Thank you for letting me know. Do you have my sound? Do we have sound? Okay, good. We have sound. I'm sorry. I don't know what I did. I think I accidentally clicked off the audio, but it seems to have come back. My fault. Anyway, what I was saying was that I was really flattered. I told a lot of my colleagues about the fact that I was doing a lot of broadcast, doing a lot of stuff on Ophelia affecting Ireland and Britain and Scotland, and that picked up such a large audience from that part of the world. It was very, very flattering. I loved it. I appreciate that all of you are here. Pacific typhoons that curve north and eastward affecting trough and ridging in the U.S. Doug Crum, yes, the ones that recurve east of Japan and Korea and eventually get absorbed by whatever upper low that's sitting in the Aleutians or Gulf of Alaska, they do tend to energize it, and that creates downstream changes. You wind up ridges build a ridge in the west and a trough in the eastern part of the United States. We saw that happen in 2014. We saw it actually happen in January of 2015 before the infamous Northeast half blizzard. About 10 days before, it just changed the whole pattern for the 2 months that followed. So they do have big impact in the longer term and need to be paid attention to. And they are kind of like a wild card in all of this because, a lot of times the climate models are not necessarily going to pick up on these things. And these typhoons do act as some sort of wild cards and shift the pattern perhaps a bit unexpectedly. So they are definitely something that we need to pay attention to. Always smiling. Thank you. I'm in my plaid. I went fishing today in my flannel, I should say. The sound, you got no sound again? I must be having some odd technical issues going on. I'm not sure why. How's that? Does the sound? Just let me know, folks, if you're hearing me or not. Okay, good. 99 Wolves, thank you. Why is lake effect snow not as persistent in northwest Indiana? That probably has to do with the fact of the orientation of Lake Michigan and the wind direction. That really plays a role in, I have to kind of look. You have to have the right angle, the right type of wind, and you might not have it there in northwest Indiana. But I got to specifically look at the geography there. Doug Cron, okay, thank you. William Huber, bass fishing today? Non-existent. I didn't catch a thing. I don't know where the bass went today, but they certainly weren't where I was fishing. Yeah, I did raise the sound up a little bit. If it's obnoxiously high, I'll take it down just a couple of notches. Okay, good. So the sound is loud. Perfect. Trying to think if there was any other things that are happening. The rain. The other thing, one of the things with this pattern change too, is the fact that we are going to see weather systems actually moving through. So that's going to mean opportunities for rain. We'll have one Tuesday, Wednesday, and we'll probably have one next weekend. And I think we may have one that follows after that, the middle of the following week. So there will be at least opportunities now for some widespread rainfall, which is desperately needed now in a lot of places. And no, Raymond, I did not anticipate severe thunderstorm warnings last week. So I suppose that on Tuesday with this weather front, that there might be some stronger thunderstorms. I don't know if they'll be severe though, but it certainly could be some stronger storms with some heavier rains. So you need a north wind where you are, PlayStation Boss, for some decent lake effect. That probably is the reason. Is northwest Indiana is not, the north wind is not going to do it. I mean, I guess it does it for that quarter of northwest Indiana, but how often do you really get a true north wind? That's the other question. Yes, this rain with this front, by the way, is going to be up and down the coast, so everybody's going to participate in this, which is a good thing. By the way, just want to address too, Storm Brian moved across Ireland and England today, as one of my regulars here. Where is he? Southside Boxing pointed out it wasn't too bad where he was. I mean, I saw that there were some winds up to about 40 or 50 knots in some places, but that was pretty much it. It was not on the order of what we saw with Ophelia, with the hurricane force winds that occurred with that storm back last week. Okay, so let's end it here. Hope everybody had a great Saturday. I want everybody to have a great Sunday, and we'll, of course, live stream tomorrow night and bring you an update on everything that's going on, Typhoon Lan, the weather across the United States, the snow prospects going forward, because now we're getting to where we can actually look at maps and start paying attention to how much snow is going to fall in some places. And, of course, the whole pattern change thing, which is really exciting, because wintertime weather is something I really enjoy. That's where I kind of cut my teeth in as far as forecasting is concerned. And I really, really look forward to that. It's extremely challenging, very frustrating, and you pull your hair out on a daily basis. So, Doug, tomorrow night, look for a live stream. I'm going to say probably about 8 o'clock. I don't think I'll do it earlier. I got a lot of things to do tomorrow. I will address, by the way, as someone brought up yesterday, I will address the possibility of a meet and greet somewhere, but we will talk about that in the next week or so. I got to get some details tomorrow, because I'm actually going to somebody else's meet and greet. But we're going to, I may try this. So 8 o'clock tomorrow night for the live stream, and everybody have a great evening and a great Sunday. We'll see you tomorrow.